Hello and welcome to the Creativity Lab, where we play and experiment with creativity, art, and ideas. I'm your creativity guide, Mr. Anderson. So today I'm going to be doing a short demonstration in how to create a watercolor sketch on location. Okay, so my tools today include the number 12 Escoda brush. It's a round tip brush with a nice point on it. I've got a Rosemary & Company blade, I think that's what it's called, a Prismacolor watercolor brush, a bottle of water in a spritz bottle, and of course my watercolor kit, a collapsible cup with water in it, and a really well-used paper towel that I've had on my palette for probably 2 or 3 years now. And finally, the paper I'm using today is 140-pound cold-pressed Arches watercolor paper. So I'm going to start today with a 5x7 sketch. I'm using my watercolor pencil to draw with because as I lay down the water later on, the lines are going to dissolve to some degree. So I'm going to start with really loose lines. I try to set my horizon line above the halfway point or below, and today I'm going to set it at the halfway point. And I've got a scene of a barn that I saw out here that I'd like to kind of focus on. Again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time making this super detailed. This will be more of an impression than anything else. It's a sketch. I kind of like these barn doors that are on the building. And that's about it. Now I'm beginning this sketch with a little bit of water spritzed into the background, and then I'm going to take my large brush and just kind of paint in with clear water into the sky. And what this does is this allows me to paint a wash into the sky that will stop right where the dry paper begins. Today's sky is pretty bright. There's a little bit of a yellowish cast to the blue, so I'm just going to kind of lay in some color here. You can see how it moves around in the water. It's not a real hard edge except for right up against where the water stops. So I'm going to lay that in here, and then I'm going to take a piece of a paper towel, just a regular paper towel. I'm going to roll it up and lay it in here and just pick up some of the color. And this is a really neat little technique for picking up some of the color that's been laid down and creating the illusion of clouds. I might put just a touch more color in here. And that gives a sort of moody look to the sky. All right, so I'm going to come back in here, and this time I'm going to work in the foreground. And I'm going to paint in here just with clear water and a clean brush. You can see those red lines that I did with the watercolor pencil are beginning to melt just a little bit. And I'm going to come in with kind of a yellow ochre mixed with a little bit of red. I'm just going to lay it in real wet. And add just touches of green down here. And I'm going to come back to this after it dries and just hit it with a little bit more, but not much. So while I'm waiting for that first layer to dry, I'm going to come in here with my round brush and a mixture of a violet color and what else did I put into that? Green, I guess, to sort of neutralize it. I'm going to come in to the side of this barn where it's a shadow area and carefully lay in my edges, and I'm going to paint around these windows just because I want them to show up a little bit differently. I want them to pop a little bit. But again, I'm still working pretty loosely here, and I'm going to try to avoid touching that wet layer of yellow that's down below. I hit it already in one spot, but I think we'll live. But you'll notice where wet touches wet, it starts to bloom out. And sometimes we can use that effectively, and sometimes it really looks nasty. Now, this sketch is starting to come together, but while I'm waiting for this foreground to dry, I'm going to start to add in some of these trees back here. And I see some back here I'd like to work on. I'll keep those a little lighter on this side, the sunny side. And there's a little hole there where I can see through. Might add a little bit of that light color right there. Watercolor is kind of at the mercy of whatever the elements are. If it's a hot day, it dries way too fast, and if it's a cool or a damp day, it doesn't dry nearly as fast as you would like. And today is a cool day, and so I'm still waiting for this area to dry. So while I am, I'm going to go ahead and put in a couple of little details here. Not a lot, just enough to show that there's something happening there. And I'll let the water do its thing and move around. And just leave it alone. There's just a little touch. It's a red barn, but there's only a little touch of the red that's actually showing up where the sun is hitting it. So I'm going to get it right here and put that on it. There's going to be a shadow at the roof line too, but we're not going to worry about that right this minute. All right, so it's dry enough on the foreground layer that I'm going to go ahead and start to lay some color in on top of it. And all I'm doing is creating sort of leading lines at this point. I noticed that there's kind of a bluish tint here for some reason in the foreground. So let's give it some of that. See what happens. Get a little dry brushy here in places. Alright, now we got to be patient and let this dry. One of the things I like to do as paint is drying is just to kind of go in with a wet brush. I've kind of done it here already, but I want to add blooms. These are imperfections that either make a painting look terrible or adds a little interest. So I'm just going to take a little clear water and put it in here into the drying paint. And I'm going to leave it alone. I'm not going to do anything else to that. And you'll see that it'll start to bloom here and start to bloom here. And I've got a little bit of bloom here, but I'm not crazy about it. I'm going to go ahead and wash it in a little bit. But as it dries, it'll create some interesting sort of atmospheric marks. Alright, this is just a little detail that needs to be added. Just something that's going to help it look more three-dimensional. And finally, I'm just going to add a little bit of value on this part of the roof, just to kind of separate it from the lower part. Hopefully that's not too dark. But if it is, I'm going to rinse my brush out, squeeze all the water out of it, and pick up some of the extra pigment that's on there. There we go, that's a little better. Okay, so here we go. This is the final sketch. It's just about dry. Kept pretty loose, and I'm pretty happy with the overall sketch.